Okay, so we have now I'll run our level 1 analyses using the script from last time. Hopefully you did not sit down at the GUI for hours clicking away, but you script it. And now you're ready to run the QA on everybody at once. So I'm going to show you what I think is the quickest way to do it. So this will involve more scripts, so they're in the class Dropbox. So check the description box of this video for links to the scripts. There are 2 scripts. You will only need one of them depending on the type of computer you're using. Oh, how do I say this? So if you're running all of your analyses on a computer that you're not using remotely, there's one script that will work fine. Or if you have a really good connection to that computer, one of the scripts will work fine. The other one is for when you're remotely using a machine, and if, say, for example, when you open an HTML file, it takes forever for the figures to load, and if you need to scroll through an HTML with a ton of figures in it, it takes forever, and it's really painful. And I've had situations where I can't even print it to a PDF. It won't print properly, either because I have too many subjects or just the connection isn't good enough. That's what the second script is for. It actually copies all of the figures so that you can move them to a local machine and view. Because the way HTML works is the HTML file is just a simple text file. But the figures, the way they appear in a web page, is that there's a link to that figure image. So if you create the HTML file and it works fine on your remote Linux system, if you then just copy that HTML file to your local machine and try to open it, it won't work because those figures don't exist on your local machine. This was a lesson that was recently learned by a student in my class who turned in their homework in HTML form, and they forgot to turn in the PNG files that went with it, and they didn't get a very good score. Okay, so that's how HTML works. And that's the basic idea. We're going to create a single HTML file with every single PNG file that's in the level 1 analysis. So we went through a little tour before of the level 1 analyses. So I'm just grabbing all those PNGs and dumping them into an HTML. There are ways to concatenate PNG files, but you lose the subject number and run number information. If you know of a faster way to do this without doing the HTML, let me know. I tried to create a big PDF and it just didn't work in a satisfactory way. But this isn't all you need to do. You also need to check that all of your files actually exist. So a good way to do that is to make sure your z-statistics are there. So if you ran for contrast, you should have 4 z-statistics in each stats directory. And if the z-statistics exist, the other 2 files you need to run the higher level analyses will exist, specifically the COPE and the VAR-COPE. Contrastive parameter estimate and variance estimate of the contrastive parameter estimates. You also need to check if you have errors in your logs. You can use grep to check that, but it's not foolproof. Right now I didn't have any feats with errors in them to recall how they spell error. I think grep is case sensitive. If it was lowercase error, all caps error, capital E error, I don't know. But it's good in general to look through the logs because sometimes things go wrong and the word error will not appear in the log. So if you have a graduate student working for you, maybe have them go through the logs. If you are the graduate student, maybe you have an RA working for you that could go for the logs, or you could just sit down and go through them yourself. It's good, and once you've looked at a handful, you'll know what's supposed to be there. So you can scroll through them pretty quickly and pick things out. Okay, so let's look at the scripts, and I'll show you the command line things that I use to check that my files exist. I'll do that first. So going to my terminal. Okay, so grep. So grep is just a string search. So if I grep, instead of error, if I grep for the string reg, what this will spit out, it looks like a mess, but it's actually not too bad. The file where the string exists, and then the line the string exists in. So here it spit it out because reg is right here. You don't need to check for reg. I just picked a string that would work because when I grep for error, I'm not getting anything, which is probably good. Capital E error, I don't get anything. All caps error. And again, I could be looking for the wrong string. Maybe they use a different string. But once you see it, if you're going through by hand, and you see one subject has a weird message, you can use grep to quickly check all the other files to see if any other subjects have it as well. So again, it's just grep, single quote with the string inside, and then you can use wildcards to grab all of the report_log.html. And this log file just looks like, I think I have one open. Yep, it just looks like this. This is broken because I actually ran this on a different machine and moved the files for the purposes of the videos. But yeah, you can go through these pretty quickly. You don't have to read every single line. After a while, you'll notice when things are irregular, and yeah, you'll be able to pick out when there are errors. So that's how you can use grep. Another thing I like to do is to quickly check that all of my files exist. And I can just do that with an ls command. So here I'm checking that all the Z statistics exist. So this is not wholly convenient, depending on how big your analysis is. This one's pretty small, so I can quickly go through and make sure each subject has 3. I do have a hiccup here with subject 8. I've mentioned before that subject 8 is problematic, and ultimately we're going to dump them, so I'm not too worried about the fact that they only have 1 run. And I already knew subjects 11 and 12. Look over here, ignore this. They only have 2 runs apiece. So it's good. I'm looking at this. I know they should only have 2 runs, and it's a good reminder because the fact that these 2 subjects only have 2 runs has implications on how I'm going to do the next level of analyses. I'm going to have to do 2 different types of scripting, one for subjects with 3 runs and one for subjects with 2 runs. And then I'm going to throw out subject 8. But if I were keeping subject 8, I would also have a template with 1 run. Okay, so they all exist. If you know how many you should have, you can pipe this into a word count command, WC, and then -L. This is an L, not a 1. Will tell you how many files there are. So if you know how many subjects you have and how many runs each subject has, you can check this number very quickly and be like, and check and ask yourself, am I supposed to have 41? Yeah, so I think typically by this stage, you know how many first level analyses you should have total. If you don't, you can quickly go back to the script you used to script this and the Python script. And we used a glob command to actually grab all of the file names, and you can use that and check how long that is and make sure that length matches this length. That's another way to check. Okay. So I have all my Z stats. Doesn't look like I have any errors, and actually I already know I don't because I've checked a lot of these logs. So now I'm ready to put my PNG files together. So this is the script for, let me make the text bigger. If you can easily view HTMLs on whatever machine the analyses live on. Okay, so, and I've used Linux remote, I've used it remotely almost my entire career. When I was a graduate student, I had my own Linux box, but those were the days. But yeah, other places where I've remotely used Linux, viewing these huge HTMLs wasn't a problem, but there's something weird about the system I'm currently using that it takes forever. Even when I'm in the building at work, it just takes too long. So it's not a matter of using it remotely from home. So anyway, but this is what you can do if you have pretty fast connection. So basically, all this is doing is, this is the output directory, or output file. So this is the HTML file that's going to exist. I delete the file if there's a pre-existing one. And then I grab all the feat directories. And then all this is doing is building the HTML file. It's putting a line so I can see, new subject start or new run is starting. And then I spit out the path to that run. And then these lines just put the PNG files in. And then last I close the file. So this one, and you can run this. Where is that? Here it is. So this is the directory where I have all these. So I can just run this doing, first you do a chmod +X and then the name of the file. And then you can run it with just, you always have to put a dot and a slash. I had trouble running some of these directly in IPython. I think there was something wonky in my editor and I got tired of trying to figure it out. So running them at the command line will work fine. So I run it and then I can go open it as soon as I find it. It's in this QA directory, this 344, this is the one I just created. Pop it open and here's what it looks like. So what are you looking for? That your regressors look as you hoped. If you have a blank regressor, maybe make sure you expected it. So that could happen if I had a subject without any junk regressors, and that's fine. But if, all of a sudden your regressor stops wiggling and it goes straight or flat, that usually indicates that you misspecified the TR length or something like that, or something's off in your onset files. This again is showing you your collinearity, so you want this off diagonal, this one to be dark. I don't find much use for this, and these are totally useless. I think these effect required. So I would just focus on this top left one to help check for pairwise collinearity. This you should have already seen, hopefully. But if not, look at it now. And I think I'm missing the translation. I'll go back. This is translate. I'm missing the rotation image. Oops, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe it doesn't exist. I'll double check and I'll edit the script if I missed it. But right, we have the mean displacement overall. And again, these slow mean displacements, I don't care. I worry more about a large relative displacement. And then these are the registration summaries. So this is the end results. The top is the bold data. The outline here is for the MNI template. Vice versa down here. MNI template is the brain. The outlining corresponds to the bold data. So you want to make sure this looks good. And this is the subjects, the bold to the subject structural, the subject structural to the MNI template. So for example, maybe you would be worried about this, but I actually wouldn't be. Don't be too worried about this like mohawking effect. If you use nonlinear registration, it'll take a little bit of skull and blur it up. But as I've said before, I've always had this problem. The teeniest bit of skull will do it. And I've read up on it. I don't think it's a huge issue. See, you'll see it here too. I think it's moving. I think it's okay. It's something I've been trying to figure out for years and seems fine. So you want to go through all your subjects and make sure it looks okay. Like this subject has a huge blip right here. Yeah. And you can tell from the design matrix. The design matrix will show if they had any volumes scrubbed. So they had a big blip here, but it wasn't scrubbed out. So maybe go look at their data and see what the data look like at that TR. There's an example of a subject that had a volume scrubbed, maybe. Yes, so here's a subject, they had one TR, or two TRs scrubbed out, or a run. So that would be right around here. Anyway, just stuff to look at. Now, as I said, sometimes this will just take so long to load if you're using a computer remotely, and you need to have all the images and the HTML in a directory that you can move around together so that the images will load. So this HTML will only work on this computer because all of these paths, how do you show? I can just do it this way. I have hard-coded the paths to all of the files. A simple fix would be to just stick these into the same directory as the HTML and it will automatically default to looking there first for the figures. So that's kind of what the second script does. So this is the alternative. In hindsight, maybe I did this a little dumb, but it doesn't matter. For some reason, I had it in my head that I had to change directories. And I think you can get away with doing this without doing this, but whatever. It doesn't matter. So the only difference here is I'm making a directory called files. I don't like sticking all the images with the HTML just because then the HTML is hard to find. Maybe it doesn't matter. So all of these are copying the files into a file directory. And then when I wrote the lines to the HTML file, instead of having the long path, it just starts with files. Okay, so that will work if I move the directory around. So I will show you. Same thing here. I've already chmoded it, so well, just just for the full effect. Okay, just in case you didn't believe me, now it's chmoded. And it's just complaining because the line for deleting didn't have anything to delete. So this I put in QA example 2. And if we look at the HTML now, right. Sorry, it just starts at files, and then the next thing, this big, huge, long thing, is just the file name. So, because I renamed the file and put it in the files directory, and the way I renamed it is to change all the slashes in the file path to underscores. And I mean, it doesn't look super pretty, but it's good enough. So now what's cool about this is I can move it. So I can move this from, oops, here to my desktop, or I could email this to you, and the HTML would still work. Okay, so if you ever create an HTML, you move it and you have a bunch of broken images, that's why. It's because your links are dead. So these links are not dead because the way they are coded, it just looks for the files directory within the directory that the HTML file lives. So that's it. Hopefully that makes sense. Right, and you only need one of those scripts, one or the other. That is all I have. So please join the Facebook group or follow on Tumblr or on Twitter or all three. And happy scripting. I hope it goes well. And again, if you have a better way of doing this, I would love to hear it because it's a little clunky. I'll admit it. Yep. Okay. Have a good day. Thanks.